This is Advisorpedia at the Fearless Conference presented by Nitrogen, and we're here with Matt Halloran, who's the co-founder at ProudMouth.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah. Everybody has a podcast now. Are we at the saturation point?
No, it's only 12% of advisors have podcasts. Come on, everybody has a podcast now. No, only 12% of advisors have podcasts, and I would honestly say 3% of them are any good.
How do I get somebody to pay attention to it?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of people just create the podcast in a vacuum, okay? So they create the podcast and then they don't actually do anything with it. Do you still syndicate it? Absolutely, right? You go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those places, absolutely. But you can take that and turn it into so much more content. That's what people need to do so that your podcast is ever present and omnipresent.
There's very few Dak Shepherds, Joe Rogans, smart lists out there. How can someone reasonably set their expectations for themselves so they're happy with it?
So we call it slow marketing. Okay, so that's really, really important. But most of what people are focused on are vanity metrics, right? I mean, Doug, nobody's getting 10,000 downloads in 48 hours. Because, by the way, if you're in the top 1% of all podcasts, okay? So being able to set really clear goals, it needs to be a 24-month long-term vision. First off, your clients need to say, that was a great podcast. Ooh, that's a win, right? Then you need to have your centers of influence saying, oh my God, I'd love to be on your podcast, right? And then when your calls to action get a little bit successively more focused, then you can be like, go to my website, download my white paper, and do those sorts of things. When you have that, that's when you can quantify really what's going on in your podcast.
So ProudMouth has some great success stories. Jeremy Keel has 100. He does a great job. What do you see podcasting turning in to a growth perspective for their businesses?
Well, I think it has to have a video component now, right? It used to be that podcasting was just fine. But now you have to have the video podcast because YouTube is the second largest podcast player and the second largest search engine in the world. So your podcast has to live there. So I think video is a huge component. I want to talk about Jeremy really quickly because he is a really good case study because he has, when you and I talked about this for years, integrated marketing. Everything points to the top of his funnel so he can quantify everything. You can't do audio, video, blogging, whatever, workshops in a vacuum. Everything's got to work together.
You still having fun?
I am, dude. That's so much fun. People are starting to ask me a lot more. They'll call me up and say, hey, is my podcast any good? And my response is, you don't want me to tell you if it's good or not. Because we actually have a grading system that we can take people through. But I'm having more fun than a 50-year-old should with this stuff. So,
Matt, great to have you with us.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Take care.